What is up, everybody? It is I, Steve SBU, coming at you guys with a draft analysis tier list here. This tier list is of all of the teams from the MMC draft league that I am a part of, ran by Manaburn, alongside some other people such as Meep. And everyone has been asking for PRs lately, and we made up a tier list before, and everyone was curious about what the reasoning was, so I thought I would just make up a video here, make it all concise for everyone. So basically, I'm just going to go through each of the teams and what is the reasons that I have picked all of them, and then just go on from there. Alright, so then first off, we will get started with the Melbourne Magearnas. So where we put them before, we, as in me and Willow, we decided to rank this one in flawed. We decided to put this one here due to the really big overlap in types and just really overall large fighting weakness. Recently he has drafted up some new teams, some new mons I mean. Some of these mons are, let me find them real quick. Okay, so these are some of the old teams, my bad. Right here. So then going all the way towards the Melbourne Magearnas, he has Ogerpon Heartflame, King Gambit, Mega Kang, Keldeo, Rotom Heat, Guard, Glowbro, Bramblegast, Tapu Bulu, and Quagsire. And he also got a Scyther here as well. So he has changed up his team, as you can see by the old ones being Primeape and Serena. I think these changes are really good. He picking up a Ghost type for spin blocking is really nice. Picking up Glowbro to help out with his pretty big fighting weakness, which is still there. Like, he has that King Gambit, the Mega Kang, the Guard, but with Bramble and Glowbro now having and even Tapu Bulu having even more resistances to fighting, that really helps out his team. So honestly, when it comes to this team, I feel like he has really made up a lot of effort there. So I'm just going to keep it here for right now, as I'm going based off of the information before he made all these changes. But I would probably move him up to decent or good with these changes, mainly because Tapu Bulu, while it's still a really strong physical mon, it doesn't get any reliable fairy stab. So it's not the best when it comes to playing the role of a fairy. And he doesn't have, if I remember correctly, he does not have any dragon type. Am I correct in that assessment? Yes, he does not have a dragon type, so he does not have the full dragon steel fairy core that you try to aim towards. And he doesn't. Oh wait, no, he does have the fire water grass core. I forget that Ogerpon Heartflame was a fire grass type, which, I mean, not the best, but at the same time, you're gonna do a lot worse than this. I would probably, again, move it up to good or decent, but for the sake of saving some time, we'll leave it down here based off of the initial draft. And that's how it will be for the rest of the tier list as well. For anyone who's made changes, I will say where we would rank you, but just keeping you in that original position. And then next we had the Quagsire Quakers. Let's pull up this team. Quagsire Quakers. Right here. Okay, so basically when it comes to this team, Lando Eye, really strong. Quag is great. Rachi is really good. All of his picks are really solid. but I notice a lot of similar weaknesses when it comes to these mons. He's fairly weak to ground. He does not have very many reliable ground resists other than Meowscarada, which is fairly frail. And yeah, he has Hisuian Typhlosion, which is weak to it. Diancie, which is weak. Victory Bell takes neutral. Quag is neutral, and Lando Eye is immune. But the example that I like to give for this team is like a ground type with ice coverage is fairly common to see. Like Iron Treads with Ice Spinner, like rolls through the majority of his team. The only thing really stopping it is Quagsire. And even then, just like a partner, just throw on a grass type and then you should be fairly well handled here. He has a lot of really good threats, and I genuinely think that he could do fairly well with this, but I feel like getting a few more varied weaknesses might help you out a bit. Like maybe instead of Magneton, pick up, say, I don't see a dragon type on your team, so maybe pick up a low tier dragon if possible. Mega Arrow is nice and it's fairly strong, but you already have a fairly like wall breaker flying type in Lando Eye. So maybe possibly drop those two mons and then pick up a solid dragon type, and maybe another ground resist, like a bulky ground resist that can actually eat hits fairly well. I like the Bisharp because Bisharp, everyone knows that it's still really good. Not as great as King Gambit, but for 12 points, that's a very solid Dark Steel type, both really good types in draft. And you can run Eviolite and do bulky variants alongside Defiant to punish any Intim users. But overall, I feel like that's sort of the reason why we decided to tier you where we did. And then next off, we have the Crusading Ceruledges right above them, right here. And let me remind myself. Okay, so the Resident Dragapult, Mega Alakazam team. Oh, he did make some changes as well. He now picked up Iron Hands instead of Pharaoh. Still has Iron Jugulus, Kilowattrel, T-Tar, and he picked up Sinistcha over Virizion, and he has Bidoof and Shedinja as well. Okay, so I feel like this might boost him up a little bit, but looking at it, you drafted away your main Steel type, which now like Dragon hits your team really hard. I'm noticing because you don't have any Fairy types as well. So having no Fairy or Dragon type means that Dragon types can really mess up your team right now. I would probably keep you right around the same spot, even though I really respect the Dragapult Mega Alakazam Iron Hands combo. Really good like potential sweepers. And that was one thing that we noted with your high tier sweepers, is that you didn't really have any like physical options for a high tier sweeper. Seems like your team is very like hyper offense, which is definitely fair, but and while yeah, you have Dragapult to possibly outspeed opposing dragon types and kill them with a Draco, but if you aren't able to do that, then like I don't see why like a strong Draco Meteor or something of that similar sort doesn't just blow your team away. Like I really think you should pick up some a defensive Steel type to eat those Fairy and Dragon type hits that might be coming your way, because you really don't have very many resistances to either of those types, and those are both like top tier types in draft. So as much as I like your hyper offense team, and I feel like you could definitely make it work with the right combo, like Iron Jugulus Tailwind, Kilowattrel, all those kinds of mons, and T-Tar got a lot of really good buffs, including knockoff. so I really do like it. And Sinistcha is also a really based pick, a nice ghost type for spin blocking, but you don't really have any motive of hazard stacking really either. Like, your team is definitely very hyper offense, and I feel like it'll be really difficult for you to break certain teams, but I could definitely see you eking out some wins. And then next up, we have the Bristol Darquazas. I believe they also made some trades as well. This is in order, by the way, of where we decided to keep everyone. So top to bottom, basically like that. There's some people who could get moved up or down depending, but that is more or less where we decided to keep everyone. Alright, so let's see. The Darquazas. Okay. So this team has Spectrier, Sneasler, Tinglu, Togekiss, Scizor, Kyurem, Thwackey, Seismitoad, Raichu, and Crocalor. Okay. Does not seem like he actually made any trades. But basically, the main issue that me and Willow had with this team initially was that it was very top-heavy, with Spectrier, Sneasler mainly being the... and also Kyurem, I guess, as well. Just making it so that you have a very solid offensive core of Mons, with a really good defensive backbone in Tinglu, and possibly defensive Scizor, but Scizor could also run offense as well. It doesn't have to do that. Also not a bad defogger as well. And then picking up Thwackey is a really good low tier pick to help facilitate unburdened sweeps on Sneasler, so I like that pickup as well. Seismitoad, good bulky water, the water ground typing, never gonna complain about that. Raichu, not the best. I guess it's a fast electric type, but without Terra in this league, doesn't really have the best coverage. It does get Surf, which is nice, but having Bolt Beam coverage on those Terra electric types is really what makes them fairly threatening. And Crocalor, really base low pick. With an Eviolite and Unaware, this thing is surprisingly bulky. I would even argue that this thing is undervalued. And as a fire type, it doesn't get Torch Song, sadly, otherwise I feel like this thing would be way higher. But even just being able to spread like Willows, Toxics, and then just sit there in front of things and stall things out, I feel like, or facilitate switches to other Mons, I feel like it's definitely a good low tier pick. All of your picks are very much good, and I respect pretty much every pick you made. The only thing is, I feel like if someone can find out ways to shut down your top tiers, like say your Spectriers, your Sneasler, Kyurem hyper offense combo, and then also has a way of 1v1ing Tinglu, I feel like you might struggle a little bit. Maybe we were a little bit too hard on your team. I could definitely see it being moved up to good. It's definitely high C tier, but I could definitely see you getting moved up here. But that's mainly just my personal opinion. I like to have a very overall balanced draft. So that's just where I come from things. Again, I could see you making really good waves as well, but I feel like the top-heavy nature means that you might be bringing the same Mons over and over again, like the same 4 or 5 Mons, and then just rotating the bottom 2 picks, which is definitely a viable option. I'm just personally someone who does my draft differently. That's part of my bias. Never claim to be objective, but that's just personally where I would rank you. Okay, and then moving up to the B tier. Next we have the Surfin Wakes. Let me pull up your team then. Surfin Wakes. Okay, so the Resident Rain team basically. Makes sense, Surfing Wakes. First pick Pelipper. I respect it, but I feel like you could have picked up some of your other Mons first, but at the same time, Like, if you got everything you wanted, then can't really, like, blame the hypothetical there. Pelipper, obviously, like, sets rain. If you're building around rain, that's something that you can definitely do. Zapdos, great pick here. Yeah, it's another flying type, but it really helps cover those electric types a little bit, at least, being neutral to it, getting 100% accuracy thunders, getting weather ball is nice. It's just overall a great pick. Maybe not so much like on a rain team specifically, but I definitely think Zapdos is a really good pickup just in general. Greninja, really good offensive pick. It get Protean, but Protean was nerfed this gen to only activate once per switch in. But at the same time, if you're spamming specs, it's not going to matter that much anyways. And this thing can destroy things when it comes to Hydro Pump in the rain as well. And oh yeah, you could also even run Battle Bond as well. Just the difference is, I guess, Battle Bond only can activate once per battle, so you really have to pick and choose. But if you're really going for just a nuclear option, I would say Greninja is not a bad, with Battle Bond is not a bad idea for that either. Aegislash, really good overall pick. Its fire weakness gets nullified by the rain, so it really likes being on rain. Gives you a good ghost type to block spin, and it's just a good overall steel type as well. Sylveon, great cleric mon. Maybe a little like high value, but at the same time, like Pixelate Hyper Voice is going to do its job. Cute Charm, you can run it occasionally with Moonblast and catch some things off guard, some physical attackers with that. And then Wish Pass, everyone loves a good Wish Pass user, and a solid Fairymon. Mega Swampert, that's your Rain Sweeper right there. Like, that's your Rainmon. It's really good at its job, and since you're not forced to Mega turn 1, you do get regular Swampert as well, so you can sort of pick and choose. I don't see why you would delay Mega, but maybe for certain matchups it would be better. Drapion, good grounded poison type. Dark poison type, always good. Armaldo, great Swift Swim user that is not a water type. I really like that pick because loading up on Swift Swim users is usually what you want to do in these cases, but having a rock bug type with Swift Swim adds a little bit extra depth to it, because then you're not super weak to grass as well. So I really do like the Armaldo pick, and it also gives you rapid spin and rocks as well. And then Poliwrath, again, another Swift Swim user. It's a fighting type, so that'll be nice too, spamming close combats in the rain. And then Probopass, just bulky steel type. You already have one. You already have a rock type. I guess it's another rocker that you can use. I don't think this is the best mon for your team, but I guess you could do way worse with 3 points. Overall, I do really like your team. The only reason why I sort of ranked you in good below some of the other weathers that you might see later on is because you're sort of not forced to, but you really, really want to use rain almost every week, and that might make your teams a little more predictable. Like, of course you can run like Zapdos, Greninja, Aegislash, Sylveon, Drapion, and 6 Pokemon without rain. It's just most of the time you are going to be bringing rain, and that might make your team a little more predictable. Whereas there are some teams who have weather, but they are not forced to use that weather every week, which makes them a lot more threatening in my opinion. So that is why I have ranked you in the lower good tier. Again, you could move up a little bit depending, because that's just the nature of these tier lists. Sometimes that's just how you got to put something there, basically. And then next we got the Toronto Rantrums. On one of the other tier lists, this was ranked as like a C or D tier team, and I do not think that this is a D tier team. Like, you get really good defensive water type Tapu Fini. Raikou is really good offensively. Husui Gudra, just a fat dragon steel type. Vaporeon, did you guys know? But again, another really bulky water type, and it can offer Wish Pass support for the rest of the team, which is really nice. Can spam Scald. It's a nice water immunity as well. You already have the resistance, but with Water Absorb, it gives you a full-on immunity, which is nice to have, and it also can heal your Mon up, of course, too. Screamtail, good overall Mon, really bulky again, very Psychic type, really good. Roserade, get Stool Spikes, Grounded Poison type, really good offensively. You can set up Leech Seed if you really want to. Like, granted, it's fairly frail, but at the same time, like, for 10 points, I think you could do a lot worse than Roserade as your Grounded Poison. I guess the only thing I would maybe change is I usually like my Grounded Poison types to be more bulky, but that's just me personally. It means that you can switch in and out more easily to absorb those T-Spikes more often. But hey, with proper pivoting, I feel like you can definitely make it work. And then Darm and Mega Beedrill, those are basically just your main sweepers to complement your more bulky options. I really like these Mons, but I feel like having both of your main sweepers being physical, kind of like your more explosive offense, of course. Like, yeah, you can set up Calm Mind with Raikou and Tapu Fini, but in order for those Mons to be really offensive threats, you really want them to either be like specs or setup. And even then, you might just miss out on KOs, because while they are strong, you usually like using them more bulky or utility wise. I guess maybe not so much for Raikou exactly, but I just feel like it's more so useful as a bulky electric that can spam paralysis everywhere. That's just me, I guess. But Darm and Beedrill, you could do way worse than this. Another grounded poison type that's just wanting to U-turn everywhere. Darm, whether it be Scarf or Band, you can do all of that really well. You can also do Life Orb Sheer Force as well. Like, there's a lot of things Darm can do offensively. And then, like, with, say, Flare Blitz, Life Orb Sheer Force, that'll nuke some things. I definitely really like the Darm pickup on your team as an offensive fire. And then Adaptability U-turns are going to hit most things really hard. Maybe a little overpriced, I guess, for a pickup. But again, you could do way worse than Mega Beedrill. And then Furret, that thing should not be 1 point. With Tidy Up, it's a fairly good hazard remover. You're not going to be clicking anything else besides it, but hey, Furret, the good boy. I always love a good Furret pick. And then Pingoro, I like him because, well, fighting dark type, very good Mon to have. Gets good pivoting options with Parting Shot, really strong overall pick. Gets Mold Breaker, which is nice. For like unaware Mons with that Crocolore, and for my team later on, Skeletor's, like being able to set up like Swords Dance, bulk up, and then sweep through unaware Pokemon, or even like Quagsire as we saw before. And then Noivern, really good speed tier, really fast Pokemon, can spam Draco Meteor, do like Throat Spray Boom Burst shenanigans. It can be specs. It can be utility with Fast Taunt, Tailwind. Definitely could do a lot worse for a dragon at 9 points. Definitely a good pickup for him. Basically, the only reason why that we decided to rank him down here is just the really reliance on very bulky cores. I know I mentioned before that I'm not a huge fan of hyper offense, but that's why he's in good and not decent. Defense, I really like the defensive cores and everything. And I also like how your steel dragon type is not your only dragon. You also have Noivern there as well. Got a good fairy core with Screamtail and Tapu Fini as well. But honestly, like just looking at it, you have a lot of overlap in archetypes, I feel like, as well. Like, you got the dual passers here. You have 2 grounded poison types here. Granted, they do fill different roles. You have 2 physical nukes instead of having maybe 1 physical and 1 special, just as an example. And you have 2 bulky waters, which, I mean, for types to overlap, bulky water is not the worst one to have either. This is all just my opinion, of course, and I feel like having you at a more middle of the road B tier is pretty fair. You could move up to like higher mid tier good, but I don't really think putting you in A tier is just way to go, especially considering some other like A tier teams. My bad, I'm sorry guys, can't talk. But that's just me personally. I would love for you to prove me wrong. Again, I like anyone who's seen my team, I love some good bulk. Like, I would definitely say that I want you to prove me wrong here and show me that your team can be a real offensive menace alongside defense. But alright, I think I said enough then. Then we got the Charlotte Crosses. Go over here first. This is Joey Heracross's team. Charlotte Crosses. Oh yeah, this team. Yeah. Just incredible bulk. You get Lando T, Corv, Lele for offense, and then just for priority stopping as well. You have Suicune, Blissey, Mega Sableye, and then you have like Cryogonal Spinning. You have your grounded poison type in Dragalge, and your resident dragon type as well. And then Chestnut, which for 10 points I think you could do a lot better for a grass type. But you don't have a fighting type, so I feel like this does work. And Electrode being 4 points. Again, without Terra, I think Electrode is not the greatest. The thing has awful coverage. Yeah, you get dual screens, but that's pretty much all this thing does. It sets up dual screens and it explodes. Or maybe occasionally like volt switch around a little bit. But for 4 points, I feel like you could get a little bit better. And I'm a little bit of a hater on Blissey. I feel like for a wish support Pokemon, you could do way better for 12 points. Like, as an example, like I already picked this up before, but Florges at also 12 points. Like, I feel like Florges would be way more useful for your team than Blissey here if you picked it up at this time. Again, though, I know you love Blissey. I'm sure you're just molding at the fact that I am talking down on your goat here, but that's just my opinion here. I like the Suicune as the bulky water. Basically does what Vaporeon does, but better stats. Lele, I am a resident Lele enjoyer. I love setting the terrain for psychic terrain. It's a good fairy psychic type. 17 points is expensive, especially since you don't have any unburdened mons or anything to really utilize that psychic terrain too much. Since with your team being as bulky as it is, you really don't care so much about priority. Mega Sableye, the stall monster, keeping those hazards off. Dragalge, spamming adaptability, Draco Meteors all over the place. Everyone knows what Lando T does, don't really have to say much about it. Corviknight, like the GOAT defensive Pokemon, literally just the cooler Skarmory. Like, I couldn't rank this team any lower than where I already did. because at the end of the day, with your stall setup, like, it's going to be an absolute monster to break through. I do not look forward to playing you, whether it be in regular season or playoffs, but I feel like if someone is able to break through your stall cores, you might end up suffering a little bit for that. That's why I marked you in B tier and not so much in threatening. And then next we have the Team Plasma Porygons. And up here, Team Plasma Porygons, where are you at? Okay, the Resident Chi-Yu team with Gliscor, Ogerpon Wellspring, Clef, Okidoji, Registeel, Electros, Articuno, Spidops, Hisui Sliggoo, and Phione. Okay, so Chi-Yu and Gliscor, absolute GOAT Pokemon. Everyone knows what these things do. Gliscor, literally #1 in usage right now in OU, and it's even better in Nat decks because it doesn't lose Roost, which, to be fair, with Protect, you already get a lot of health back from Poison Heal anyways, but if you really just want to be a menace with Roost, you definitely are able to run it. Ogerpon Wellspring can set up spikes, it's really good at that. It's a great water absorber for Chi-Yu and Gliscor. Really enjoys having this thing on the team. Clef, everyone knows what Clef does. It still has access to Soft Boil being in Nat decks, so this thing is still capable of just doing whatever the hell it wants, whether it be teleporting around, spamming Paralysis, Magic Guard, Life Orb sets. Like, this thing, like, everyone knows what Clef does, and that's a good point to set it at. Nice and expensive for this monster that can be a wall or offensive threat. Basically, it just does whatever. And then Okidoji, not a bad grounded poison type. I've never personally used it before, so I don't exactly know what it does, but I do know that with Toxic Chain, it's spreading Toxic really well, and it's also a fairly good fighting type as well. And with Chi-Yu on your team as your dark type, like, switching on psychic types shouldn't be the worst thing in the world for you, especially with Registeel next to it as well. Eating those psychic type moves. Electros, more of a low tier electric, but this thing doesn't really quite need the Bolt Beam coverage as much, mainly because it gets like Flamethrower, Drain Punch. It just really wishes it had like a more physical electric stab than Wild Charge. But this thing can do fairly well at whatever it needs to. Articuno, I would say it's a fairly decent, like, low tier pick. With Freeze Dry, it does things pretty well. It gets Hurricane. Like, it's very specially bulky. I feel like you could do a lot worse for 6 points. I'm not a hater. I've seen people go really far with an Articuno, so... Also with heavy duty boots and defog support, that does seem like it might be one of your only, like, removal options, I guess, other than Gliscor. Defog as well. And then Spidops, the Hazard Settermon that goes in for like 3 turns, clicks webs and maybe 1 layer of spike and then dies. But hey, I can't say much. The thing does do fairly well at that job. And I guess with like first impression, it can do decent if you keep it around as like a late game mon. If you have like a Pokemon at low health that you just really want to get rid of with a priority move. Not the worst thing in the world, just underwhelming stats. And then Hisui Sliggoo, as your dragon type, it's not great. It can do its job fairly well. It's fairly bulky with a Violite, just not the biggest fan. Like, Hisui Gudra, like, is really good, and Hisui Sliggoo, I could definitely see you getting usage out of, but just generally not the biggest fan. But I guess for 3 points and you really need a dragon type, I think you could do way worse than Hisui Sliggoo. And then Phione, for a 1-pointer, this thing is value. Like, it gets Take Heart, which is basically like jungle healing where it heals your status moves, and also a Calm Mind. Like, that is a complex ban on Manaphy, but Phione it is still allowed on. So for 1 point, like, that's a really good value pick. You aren't necessarily in need of a water type since you already have Ogerpon Wellspring, but with 80 stats across the board and Take Heart, I think you could definitely get good usage out of Phione. But mostly, we decided to rank you mid B tier, mainly just for the fact that, like, well, I just don't see any obvious synergy in your team. Like, I know that might just sound cringe, but it's just like, with a lot of these teams, you can really see how every mon works well together. And I can see like mini synergies with like Ogerpon and Gliscor and Chi-Yu being able to absorb those water type attacks for them. But it's just like, it almost to me feels like a team of like individuals. Like good individuals that can do their job, but I'm just basically, this is one of the teams that could either be moved up or down quite a bit depending on how you play. So I thought that middle of the road in B tier would be the most fair since, again, with most of these mons I haven't really used that much. So I thought middle of the road B tier would be the most optimal place to put them. Then next we have the Vivillon team, which I cannot pronounce the name of your team for the life of me. Yeah, I'm not even going to try to pronounce that name. But Annihilate, Megaciz, Primarina, Galv, Victini, Appleton, Regirock, Gligar, Overquill, Claydol, and Kanto Tauros. So basically, like, one of the best mons to punish, like Rapid Spin, Defog, like, heck, even Mortal Spin, which only is on one Pokemon, it punishes because it gets hit and then you boost its Rage Fist. Like, this is one of the best mons to keep hazards up out there. And alongside Galvantula with Sticky Webs, like, this thing isn't the fastest thing in the world, so it really enjoys having webs against it. And then Megaciz, everyone knows what this thing does. Really bulky, can hit really hard, even uninvested. Gets Roost, Defog, offers good support for the rest of his team. Primarina, surprisingly strong, and a really good Fairy type, and a good Water type at that too. For 13 points, I think you could do way worse than Primarina. Fairly slow, but even with those that fairly underwhelming stat, like a Choice Scarfer, this thing is not the worst Choice Scarfer in the world. I've seen it ran really, really well, especially in like low tier ladder. And being able to run like Scald, Moonblast, and it gets really good coverage in like Ice Beam, Energy Ball. Like, you can do really well with Primarina. Galv, Sticky Web support, and potential like Choice Specs user. For 9 points, not a bad electric type mon. Could do way worse. I'm not usually the biggest fan of Pokemon who can only do one thing, but for Galv, like, just even slapping on like Sticky Webs on the Choice Specs team, like, could do way worse than that. And almost 100% accuracy. Thunders are always going to be nice to spread paralysis as well. Then Victini, 17 points, pretty expensive, but this thing can be an absolute nuke with its offensive coverage and Bolt Strike, and like Blue Flare, Fusion Flare, Fusion Bolt, and then V-Create, and then I guess also like its Stab, Zen Headbutt as well, and its ability boosting the accuracy of its attacks. Like, this thing could be an absolute nuke of a fire type. Usually doesn't like rocks, of course, unless you're running boots, which then cuts into your offensive capabilities. So it's definitely a flawed mon, but I think like this is overall a pretty good Pokemon. Not the best defensive typing, so you wouldn't really want to run it defensively. But Victini can do some really good things if given the opportunity. Appleton, I really like it. It's not as good as it is with Terra, but even on its own, like thick fat, making it 4 times ice weakness, just a 2 times is really nice. Giving it a fire neutrality, it can do shenanigans with Gluttony, Ripen, and like a citrus berry or a stat boosting berry. It can spam Draco, like for a mon that completes your Fire Water Grass core as well as your Steel Fairy Dragon core. I think you could do way worse than Appleton. I really like this Pokemon. Spams Leech Seed everywhere, good bulky mon that can do offense. I always love those kinds of Pokemon best. Regirock, resident Stealth Rock user here. The thing pretty much does one thing, is click Stealth Rock and eat hits. That's all it really needs to do. For 6 points, that is pretty value. Being the rock type, it's not the best in the world because rock has a lot of weaknesses. But I feel like I could definitely see you using this in the right matchup and using like the Iron Defense, like Rock Polish, Body Slam, like not Body Slam, Body Press set. I could definitely see you running this and getting good usage out of it, even if just as a rocker. And then Gligar, I like this mon. Really good for ground types, since other than Appleton, you really don't have that many great ground type switch-ins. Just don't really like that 4 times ice weakness, but you also have mons like Victini, Megaciz, Regirock that can handle ice types fairly well. So it's not the worst thing in the world. It can set up rocks. It gets T-Spike and regular Spike as well. Oh yeah, and that's something I did mention that I did not mention before with the Gliscor team as well. It gets both kinds of spikes now, which is a huge buff. There you go. Apologies. Right here. Okay. So yeah, Gligar definitely could do way worse. You're probably only really going to be using it for hazards most of the time, but it does that fairly well. And then speaking of dual spikes, you have Overquill, which I really like. I've used it in another league I was in. It was an absolute goat. Getting Intimidate is great. Barbarage, having a 50% chance to poison the opponent and then becoming 120 base power when your opponent is poisoned. It's just really good. A really good dark type as well. I love this Pokemon. I love that you picked up this mon. It's great water coverage, swift swim potential. Like this thing, you could do way worse than Overquill at 11 points. This thing is straight value. I love this thing. And now for Claydol. I am a resident Claydol hater. Like, its typing is not that good. Yeah, it's another ground switch-in, which is nice. But, like, it's a rapid spinner. Like, your only rapid spinner. And it dies to spin blockers, being ghost types. So, that's sort of the issue. You might have some issues getting a spin off. And yeah, you can set rocks, which is nice, and having a psychic type on your team isn't the worst thing in the world, but you already have Victini for it, and you already have a ground type in Gligar as well. So personally, I feel like of all the mons, Claydol is kind of your weakest link here. I get you needed a rapid spinner, but I feel like you could do way better for a spinner than Claydol personally, especially like a spinner that just dies to most spin blockers. And then your last mon is Tauros. I really like that because it's another mon that helps with Claydol's ghost weakness alongside Overquill, because before it almost seemed like Ghost would kind of roll through your team a little bit, being like Annihilate is weak to it, Megaciz is neutral, and Victini is weak to it, and you had no resistances up until Overquill and an immunity in Tauros. You also get Sheer Force. It gets a few things that get boosted by Sheer Force, which is good offense potential. It's a good Intim user. Good for Overquill as well, being able to pivot between the two and get dual Intimidate. They don't really cover each other's weaknesses the best, so they're not the greatest Intim pivoters, but definitely could do way worse as a final pick. And then basically, we decided to rank your team in the middle of B, mainly just because you have a lot of really good potential, but I feel like Claydol is just not going to be the best mon for you. Like, you really want to be keeping hazards up with your Annihilate and all of your hazard stacking with Overquill and Gligar, or even Regirock as well. You really want to keep those hazards up and get rid of hazards as well. And Claydol is just not the best Pokemon to use that for, because you just die to spin blockers then. So at the end of the day, you might end up deciding to run Defog most of the time, which then gets rid of your own hazards. So again, really good potential team. It's just that one weak link, I feel like, is what's screwing you over here, because I could honestly see you moving up to A tier if you get a better spinner. And then next up, let me check my notes, is the Navy Spheals. Absolute goated team name, by the way, and logo. I love that team. The Navy Spheals. Here you are. Okay, so we got Zeraora, Garm, Mega Diancie, Empoleon, Latias, Claude, Galarian Moltres, Volcanion, Shiftry, and Swirlix. Okay, so a fairly top-heavy team again. I'm not the biggest fan of top-heavy teams, but I guess at the same time, look at me up here too. But Zeraora, good. Physical sweeper. I feel like this mon isn't the best. Everyone I've seen use this mon basically sends it in, gets a few good strong hits off, and then it dies. It does its job very well. It's just you have to be really skilled in using it, I feel like. And then you got Garm, which is just straight up the better physical sweeper most of the time. Getting the Gorilla Tactics alongside a Choice Scarf. This thing is just so fast and hits so strong. And it has great coverage in Flare Blitz, Fire Punch, Earthquake, and then U-Turn alongside its Ice Stab and Icicle Crash. This mon is the GOAT. I love this mon. I feel like this mon will be your kill leader at the end of the day. And then Mega Diancie, good for keeping hazards off. Really good special sweeper. Really bulky pre-Mega as well. So I really like that as well as a possibility. Really good Fairy type. And one of the few Rock type that does really, really well. With Power Gem, or even running Physical with Diamond Storm to boost your defense. Mega Diancie is a really good Pokemon, and I feel like you could get a lot of really good usage out of it, even if it's just for blocking hazards and even getting up your own with Stealth Rock. But I feel like Mega Diancie is a really good one for you. Empoleon got a huge amount of buffs in the DLC. It got Competitive, Flip Turn, and Roost. This mon, everyone's been wanting to use it. Some have been calling it overrated. Some have been saying that it's not as good as that people really think it is, but Empoleon, I feel like complements your team really well. Offers a really good Steel type, a really good Water type. It can be bulky, it can be offensive with Competitive, really punishing those Intimidate users out there. I think Empoleon is a really good pickup for you. And then to finish off your Fairy Steel Dragon Core, you got Latias. Really good Pokemon. No one will complain about having a good, well-placed Latias. Really bulky as well, and that's something I sort of notice with all these Pokemon is that they are offensive, like possible offensive Pokemon that also have a lot of defensive usage, which I really enjoy in a Pokemon. So I really respect that a lot. Can do Calm Mindsets, drop Dracos everywhere. A good Psychic type, since Psychics aren't usually the best. So it's good when you pick up a really good Psychic type. And then Claude, the main defensive mon of your team, the grounded Poison type. I feel like you have a lot of really good water resists anyways, so running unaware is also really helpful for Claude. Being able to set Rock, Spike, T-Spike, and then absorb other opposing toxic spikes, I think Claude could be a really good mon for your team, especially since you don't have either a poison or a ground type yet. And that's something I feel like some people maybe miss out on occasionally, is that they are overlapping types on their walls, which makes them less good as walls because they're pretty much having the same weaknesses as the things that they're supposed to be switching into, as they're supposed to be switching in for. And that's just my opinion, at least. I really like that. And then Galarian Moltres, a good flying type mon. You don't have a dark or a flying type yet, so that's a good pickup for you for sure. And at 9 points, this thing can do really good. Like, I wouldn't say it's a top tier or anything, but it's a good dark type. It's a good special dark type as well. Most dark types are physical, at least from what we have seen, due to the prevalence of knockoff. But I feel like with Berserk as well, you could run some really, really good like Choice Scarf sets. Eat one hit, get the +1 attack boost, special attack boost. Then you pretty much have like a special Dragon Dance going. And with Strong Stab and Hurricane, I think you can do really well with that. And then Volcanion. You already have a water type, and you don't have a fire type. Okay. So Volcanion, one of those really versatile mons, has really good bulk, can do really well offensively as well. Good defog user. And yeah, gets pretty decent, like, let me think for a sec. Gets decent coverage with like Earth Power, but like most of the time its fire and water stabs are at least enough to cover any of its weaknesses that it might have. So maybe you do run like mainly bulk with some offense. But regardless, I think Volcanion's a decent pick. I don't think it's the worst thing in the world that you could pick up here. And like I said before, like, water is not the worst type for you to double up on. And now for your lower tiers, you have Shiftry and Swirlix. I do like Shiftry. It would be better in Sun, of course, but as an extra dark type, can't complain that much. It did get buffed with Wind Rider, or Wind Power, one of the two. So it gets an attack boost when it is either hit by a wind move or it is under Tailwind. So I could see you setting up like Tailwind with Galarian Moltres, or even like switching in on Heat Waves and Hurricanes, since you're immune to those types, and then getting an attack boost and threatening them in return if you have like a Choice Scarf. For 3 points, this thing is really good. Would be better on a Sun team, but I think for like a low tier grass, this thing could be way worse. And then Swirlix, like, it does add value. Like, it gets Sticky Web, so if you really want, run it with Focus Sash, Sticky Web, boom, that's all you need it for. Like, I don't see anyone doing like Belly Drum Unburden on this thing. If you do, you are the GOAT. But yeah, not the worst thing in the world, but like, what are you gonna do with a low tier mon like that? Overall, I do really like your team. Granted, I felt like I've said this about a lot of things. I personally just feel like Zeraora could be swapped out with something else. I feel like it's fairly underwhelming as a sweeper, and you aren't really like lacking on any sweepers on your team. So maybe getting a little bit more of a versatile Pokemon as your with those 17 points would be nice. But overall, that's mainly the reason why we ranked you in high good, is just because we feel like you could do slightly better with certain things. But I do really like your team, and I feel like you definitely are a playoff contender if you play well. And then next up, at the top of good, we have the Claire Kingdras. Let me remind myself. Okay, so Mega Mawile, Hydreigon, Rotom Wash, Azelf, Donphan, the Dunsparce, Cradily. Wait, yeah, Cradily. Yeah, you switched out Aromatisse for Cradily. My bad. And then Frostlass, Galarian Weezing instead of Galarian Slowbro, and picking up Halucha as well instead of regular Executor. I feel like your team possibly could move up to threatening with these changes, but I think leaving you around this spot is probably just for the best here. Mainly because, like, the thing I saw with your team is I didn't see any obvious synergy. I know I said that before, but it's basically like, oh, I could see how this mon switches into this, because it takes these attacks fairly well for this Pokemon, and it can threaten its counters in return, and they work really well together. None of that is really obvious with this team for me. Of course, every team builder is going to see their team in a different light than other people, so that's why we marked you in high good, because you really do have a lot of really good threats in Mega Mawile, Hydreigon, Rotom Wash. Azelf is a good lead with a lot of really good offensive potential. One of the best removers in the game with Donphan, well, in base game at least. And then the Dunsparce. You could do better than this, but at the same time, I love the meme. I love this guy, so I can't even talk crap. And then Cradily over Aromatisse. I honestly feel like Aromatisse added a little bit more value as a Wish supporter, but at the same time, I am a Cradily enjoyer. I can't complain too much, but I just feel like utility-wise, I feel like this offered more to your team than Cradily did. And then Frostlass, good spin blocker, pretty much all it really needs. Can set spikes, that it can do that. It's a fast debond user, so you can catch some things off guard. Not the worst Pokemon in the world. If you're going to pick up Ice type, I feel like Frostlass is one of the better ones. Galarian Weezing over Galarian Slowbro. I love Glowbro, I really do. But Galarian Weezing, I will definitely say probably is the better pick. Fairy Poison, really good in draft. It can set T-Spikes, it can Misty Explosion. I think it gets Misty Surge as well, which works really well with Halucha. So adding a little bit of synergy there, which I really do like. That might be enough to move your team up a little bit in my eyes. But yeah, that's mainly it. 1 second, I need to pause here real quick. Alright, sorry about that, just had a call. Okay, so then where were we again? Oh yeah, talking about Claire Kingdras. Yeah, that's mainly the biggest thing. I feel like your team is really good. Like, I can see you doing really well with it. It's just I need some convincing on the different synergies, personally. That's just me. Like with some other teams, I can see a lot of obvious synergy. This, I just, for some reason, can't quite seem to see it. I might just be a hater, but that's just me. Alright, and then next up, who do we have? Alright, we have the St. John Sharpedos. Steal this from here. Alright, so the St. John Sharpedos. Here, so we got Garchomp, Megalop, regular Slowbro, Magnezone, Chandelure, Mandibuzz, Ribombee, Mudsdale, Amoonguss, Glaceon. Alright, I like this team. Really good hazard stacking with Garchomp. Really good offense, even really good offense too. I keep forgetting Garchomp does get Scale Shot again, and it can always set up with SD, basically being like a slightly less good backs in my opinion. And then Megalop, everyone knows what this thing does. This thing is just really good. And then Slowbro, really good defensive Pokemon, eating a lot of the hits that would be aimed at these two here fairly well, like fighting type moves at Megalop and ice type moves from Garchomp. Magnezone, eating those ice type moves pretty well, and also taking those electric moves from Slowbro, and Slowbro in return being able to mostly take the ground type moves that are aimed at Slowbro. But if not, that's why you got Mandibuzz over here to eat those ground type moves, and also Magnezone to help take the ice and electric moves aimed at Mandibuzz. And then Chandelure, a really good special nuke, a really good spin blocker as well, being able to switch in on spin and punish really hard with like a Choice Scarf, Choice Specs set, depending on if you want to outspeed the rapid spinner or not, and be able to either threaten it out to keep the hazards up or just KO it in return. And then Ribombee, really good offensive mon. It gets Quiver Dance. It also can be used offensively with Sticky Web as well. I think this thing gets Sticky Web at least. And overall, just a really good fairy type, and rounding out your fairy, steel, dragon core pretty well. Then Amoonguss, the imposter when the imposter is sus. Good grounded poison type, spamming Spore. I feel like this thing, you could do way worse than Amoonguss personally. I feel like it fits your team fairly well. Oh, sorry about that. Got a buffer. But yeah, Amoonguss, really good. Spamming Spore, or even spamming Poison. Like Toxic everywhere, depending on what you need. And then Glaceon, good low tier ice type. Gets Calm Mind now, so adds a little bit more depth there. Good with Wish and Baton Pass as well. Could do way worse for 2 points, like getting a good low tier ice alongside Baton Pass. Could do way worse. So basically, I just really like all the defensive synergy that you can see with this team, and being able to threaten with really good offense with Garchomp and Mega Lopunny. And even like the defensive mons can threaten like pretty well with Magnezone and Slowbro. Like those things, you don't really want to mess with them. Also, I completely forgot about Mudsdale, but good to set up rocks, boost up with stamina or iron defense with body press. Like it does its job. It's a good ground, but you already have a good ground type in Garchomp, so I could see if you wanted to replace that as well. Ribombee, really good special sweeper. Can also add a lot of support with webs. So yeah, I feel like with webs and everything, your team is really, really strong. Most things are getting outsped by Megalope at -1, and even like Garchomp, like even most Choice Scarfers, if they got -1, would get outspeed by Garchomp. So I feel like a lot of these mons do really like being supported by webs, and that's just sort of what gives you the edge over the Claire Kingdras, is that I can see some really clear, good synergies here with your team. Not a lot of type overlap, and what type overlap there is, it's like basically a rocker, another one, just in case like maybe Garchomp isn't the best in that matchup. I could see you bringing Mudsdale, but if there is any mon that gets replaced, it would be Mudsdale, I feel like. But next up, we got the Superior team. I forget what your name is. I apologize. San Francisco Serperiors. Okay. Oh, this team. The Iron Val Godango Roaring Moon team. Just crazy offense. And Goldango to keep hazards up. Like, even defensive Goldango, crazy. Slowking, really good at facilitating switches to your offensive threats. And getting burns on Pokemon. Really good bulky water. And then just really good for eating most of the hits that come towards these Pokemon. Shaman, I am a certified Shaman hater. Like, I feel like you could do better for a utility mon than Shaman, but hey, again, I've never really used this mon, so maybe I'm just unenlightened. That's definitely possible. I just feel like Celebi would be better in this position personally. Moltres, good offensive mon, good defog support, but the thing that I really note is you really want to keep your hazards up, so maybe like clicking defog isn't the best option here, and that's just sort of the issue with it, in my opinion, is that as a defog supporter, it sort of goes counterintuitive with what you want to be doing with Goldango. And then, I know this says Nidoking, but he actually did make a change on his team right before Grace ended, where it was changed to Nidoqueen. I'm still going to be rating it where Nidoking was. He might move up like a spot or two now that he has Nidoqueen, because I feel like Queen really helps support his team much better than King does, mainly because it adds a little bit more bulk, and it can still run offense, whereas Nidoking can't really run bulk as easily, even though it is more offensively explosive. Megamane, huge fan of Megamane. Really fast Pokemon, good coverage with its fire type moves, and for 8 points too, that's pretty value, and getting a value Intim user as well. Like, being able to switch on Thunder Waves and get the Lightning Rod boost, or like just Volt switches, get Lightning Rod boost, Mega, intimidate a physical attacker coming in, and then just click buttons. Like, this thing, you could do way worse. Toad's Cruel, not the biggest fan, because you already have your grass type in Shaman as well, and a ground type in Nidoking. You have it for spinning support, which, like, yeah, you can do it, but at the same time, you would also want to be clicking like rocks, for example, which, yes, Nidoqueen does as well. So maybe you won't even be using rocks as much on this thing. But then, like, it gets negative priority on all of its status moves. Like, so you really got to make sure this thing is healthy, otherwise it's going to die and not offer your team anything. Spamming Spore is nice, and you could do a lot worse than Toad's Cruel, but I feel like for a guy who really needs like a spinner instead of a defogger, when you have Goldango there to keep your hazards up, the last thing you need is a bad spinner, and I feel like Toad's Cruel is just a very mid spinner. And then Dunsparce, love this guy. We'll never complain about a well-placed Dunsparce. It's your low tier. What are you gonna do? I have his team here mainly just because I feel like the what I said about Rapid Spin and Defog. If you get a better Rapid Spinner, I feel like you could do much better, and even get moved up to S tier if your removal gets a little bit better than Toad's Cruel / Moltres, but that's mainly my only complaints with it, is that it goes counter to what you got Goldango for. And then next up, this is where Willow ranked my team. I don't really like to talk my team up too much. I mean, it's my team, so at the end of the day, I'm going to give it more praise than I would another team. But that's just me personally. Like, here's my team: Ursaluna, Galarian Slowking, Urshifu Rapid, Thundurus Incarnate, Zarude, Skeledirge, Florges, Cobalion, Flygon, and low tier Wynot. Y'all can roast me for my picks if you desire. Say that I deserve to be in B tier if you want. But this is where Willow placed me. So I'm just gonna basically keep me there just for the sake of keeping the tier list consistent. Then the New York Garchomps. Actually, we have the logo down here. So I'll switch that. So here, we have the New York Garchomps next. And right here, the resident E-Terrain team with Tapu Koko, Bundle, Treads, Tangrowth, Alomomola, Megazard X, Alola Uxie, Drifblim, and Corsola. This team has a lot of potential. Basically, the only issue I could have seen with it is that for your only fairy type, Tapu Koko doesn't really usually use its fairy typing very much. I mean, it can, but Dazzling Gleam instead of Moonblast or Play Rough really just isn't ideal. But other than that, like, Bundle is great under terrain. Treads is a really good remover, really good steel type. I love the Treads pick. And then having a Regen Core and Tangrowth and Alomomola to basically cover each other's weaknesses, and not requiring Alomomola to be your only water type for your Fire, Water, Grass core with Megazard X as well. And then being really good, a really good Dragon type on top of that. Just adds a lot of threatening capabilities. And then Alola as well. Is a really good grounded poison type for your dark type as well. And then Uxie, good psychic type mon. And then Drifblim, just a great low tier. Great spin blocker, can offer a lot of support with Tailwind, Strength Sap, etc. Really like this mon, really bulky. And then Corsola, not the best in the world, but it also gets regen, so it adds a little bit more to your regen core as well, if you don't want to be bringing Alomomola. I think this team has the makings of a great team. Basically, the only thing I could see that was wrong with it is that you would like a better fairy. Not that you should get rid of Tapu Koko by any means, but maybe, like, say, Corsola and, like, maybe Uxie. Actually, no, maybe not Corsola, since that's a one-pointer, you know. But maybe, like, combining these two, getting a more mid-fairy type, and then getting a different low tier as just an idea. But that's just my opinion. You're high A for a reason. You have a very threatening team. I feel like you could just keep it the way it is, and it's perfectly fine. Just give me 1 second, I need to pause again. Sorry about that again. I needed to go help out my younger brother with something. Okay, where was I again? Okay, so New York Garchomp. Yeah, basically your entire team is really, really good. I could see you honestly, like, making high level playoffs with this team. Just those few small things that were keeping it out of possible S tier for me. That's just my own preference, though. I feel like with correct gameplay, you could do really well with this. Next up here, 1 second once again so I can pull up my list. We have the Silvally Sweeds. Oh, we already had the St. John Sharpedos right there. The Silvally Sweeds. This is Manaburn's team. He picked up Ursaluna Bloodmoon, Weavile, Mega Alt, Mew, Iron Moth, Skarm, Lantern, Oricorio, which can get every form, Surfetched, Cacturn, and that's it. I love this team. Like, fellow Ursaluna enjoyer. Bloodmoon, absolute GOAT Pokemon. It is definitely worth every single one of those 20 points. It can do so much. I love the thing. Weavile, Really good offensive Pokemon, especially with Chien-Pao out of the lineup as well. It can do its job super well. Mega Altaria, great Fairy and Dragon type. Mew can do pretty much anything. It can hazard stack, it can be offensive, it can be defensive, it can be a hazard remover if it needs to. Just great. Iron Moth, great offensive Mon. Grounded poison type that can set toxic spikes as well, but with a booster energy gives you really good speed tiers as well alongside these. Skarm, really good for absorbing ground type moves coming at, like, say, Iron Moth, for example, especially since you don't really have very many ground resistances right now. Good for more hazard stacking. Good just overall defensive. Steel flying type. But yeah, really wish you could have gotten Corv, to be honest, because Skarm is just not it. I'm not a big Skarm fan. It does well on your team, and I respect it, but at the end of the day, like, the better Skarm. And then Lantern is a really good pickup for you. It's really good with either Water Absorb or Volt Absorb to take that immunity, say, from water types aimed at Blood Moon and Iron Moth, or electric type moves coming at Skarmory or any of the Oricorio forms. Overall, just a good defensive water, can spam paralysis everywhere, is a good overall electric type, and for 7 points, that's pretty good value. Oricorio, getting all the forms is really nice, means you get so many more typings possibilities with this Pokemon. You can have it be a fire, an electric type, a ghost type, a psychic type. It can be pretty much whatever you want it to. It can set up quiver dances. Revelation Dance is really nice as just a general secondary stab move for all of them. You can have a diet like Zapdos with the Oricorio Pom Pom. And then it gets Hurricane as well. Like, Oricorio for 6 points, I think that is a really good pickup as well. Decent for defog support as well, I feel like. If it gets defogged, I imagine it does, but just in case. And then Surfetch, love this Pokemon, super freaking strong, really bulky. It's just a little slow, but for 7 points and you needing a fighting type, I think Surfetch is a really good Pokemon to keep there. And then Cacturne, 2 points. It could do a lot worse than Cacturne. I would argue that it's one of the not great grass types out there just from how frail it is, but offensively it's really strong. It's another immunity to water, gives you really good dark coverage, especially since you don't have any other dark. No, you have Weavile, never mind. Just gives you really good offense on either end of the spectrum. You could even do like Leech Seed, Sub, Protect, like stall shenanigans if you want to. Overall, I just really like your team in general. I feel like it does have a little bit of the sense of I don't see all of the synergies, but as an example, like fighting types into Weavile and Blood Moon are easily taken by Mew, Mega Altaria, and Iron Moth. And then like Ice is taken care of well by Skarmory and Weavile. Water is taken care of by Lantern. Like, I can see how all these mons work fairly well together. But I don't see any like super good like synergy per se, but all of these mons individually are really good. And you describe it really well in your own draft analysis. For anyone who hasn't seen it, I recommend looking at it, because that's sort of what sold me on the quality of his team, seeing the reasoning for everything. And that's what I decided to put as top of A tier. He is the gatekeeper of the S tier. I feel like there's just a few things that his team could be tweaked that keep him out of S tier, but I feel like this is the best team that is not S tier. And now finally, for the GOATs, you already know it's these two teams. I ranked Willow's team And I decided to rank his team this high, simply put, because it's a Sun team that doesn't rely on Sun. Walking Wake, Great Tusk, of course they love to be in Sun, but thanks to the buffs that Walking Wake got in Knockoff and Flip Turn, it can operate really well outside of Sun as well. In Great Tusk, everyone knows what this thing does. It likes being in Sun, but it doesn't need it in order to operate. Grimmsnarl, good Fairy type and Dark type, offers Prankster dual screens, Prankster T-Waves to spam everywhere, really good pick. Torkoal for your Sun. I feel like regular Ninetales with Baton Pass might be better here, but in order to set hazards and another spinner alongside Great Tusk, I feel like Torkoal could be a lot worse. And of course, you also get Eruption on this thing as well. And Yawn support is really nice as well. So I think this is a really good pickup as well. Ceruledge, his only other fire type on a Sun team. And basically, everyone knows what Ceruledge does. It sets up, it takes one hit, gets weak armor boost, and then it sweeps things. That's all you really need it for. It's a good ghost type for spin blocking as well. And with Sun boosted Fire Stab alongside like your Bitter Blade, with your Bitter Blade and everything like that for healing, like Ceruledge, I could definitely see getting a lot of good kills for you. And then Venu, great Sun Sweeper, grounded poison type, great grass support. It can even operate outside of Sun as well as a really good, just tanky Pokemon with Sleep Powder and Leech Seed. Zong, not the best in Sun because, you know, making its fire weakness more prominent, but it can run Heat Proof. So theoretically, it is possible for you to run this on a Sun team without absolutely crippling it. And then Mega Pidgeot, the GOAT, Bird Jesus, gets 100% accuracy Hurricanes even in the Sun because of No Guard. Like, I think this is a really GOAT pick for a Sun team. Like, a No Guard Hurricane user to take care of all those, sorry, I can't think of any specific examples, but like, Mega Pidgeot, you could do way worse than that. 12 points, really fast, really strong. Oh yeah, it's a ground immunity, which is great for your more Sun-based team. And Jolteon, 10 points is fairly expensive, but at the same time, like, Fast Electric, gets Calm Mind, gets Signal Beam. Like, this thing, you could do a lot worse for a Fast Electric type than Jolteon. It does its job really well. And then Clawitzer, I feel like this is the one Mon that I sort of needed a little bit of convincing on, but he made a fairly good case that it has really good coverage alongside its ability Mega Launcher, and I could definitely see him like doing fairly well with it. And for 6 points, it's not the worst thing in the world. I just think that personally he could get a little bit more value out of his 6 points, especially since you're not going to be using Stab on this thing in the Sun usually. But that's, again, the thing that I really like about his team. Since his team isn't, like, super reliant on Sun, he actually can, like, run the Clawitzer 1 week if he needs to. He can run just, like, regular Booster Energy Walking Wake, or Choice Specs, or, like, just a generic Great Tusk. Like, he doesn't have to bring Torkoal every week, and instead bring one of his other Mons, like a Bronzong instead, as a defensive Pokemon, and still get really good value out of it. So that's why I decided to put him in S tier, alongside the undisputed GOAT of this season, and that is the Center City Ceruledges, drafted by Victory Star. Just by looking at this team, everyone knows why it is the top, and that is simply because... Where the heck? Okay. Corntherian. Good defensive flying type Pokemon. Regen Pokemon. No one really is complaining about this Mon whenever they draft it. Yeah, it's a bit expensive, but really good value pick. 15-point Baxcalibur after getting Scale Shot. This thing should have been 17, 18 points. Everyone has been saying it, the mods recognize it. Some are still not believers, but I genuinely think this Pokemon should have been way more points. Really good pick. Bax, everyone knows what this thing does. It can SD, it can Dragon Dance. It just sweeps things. It's so strong. Especially alongside this monster here, which really facilitates it, but we'll get to it when we get to it. Hisuian Samurott, really good hazard stacker, great dark type Pokemon. It can be ran defensively as a hazard stacker and still hit really hard with its sharpness boosted stab attacks. With Ceaseless Edge and Aqua Cutter, it gets priority in Sucker Punch and Aqua Jet, gets good coverage with Sacred Sword and X Scissor. Like, this thing can just do so much. It's a great Pokemon. 14 points is definitely worth it. Even when you have the other best hazard setter in the game, Glamora, where it can set basically every hazard aside from webs. And, like, since you also do have Hisuian Samurott here for spikes, like, this thing doesn't have to run, like, hazards all the time. It can run offensive sets, which is really nice, because it has, like, 135 base special attack. It's not bad. And as a grounded poison type, it's absorbing toxic spikes alongside of that. Like, it can Mortal Spin, so it can be hazard control on top of it. Really good versatility. And then Mienshao, it's not my favorite Pokemon. It can definitely do some really good things, especially with Regenerator alongside Torn T, being able to basically regen swap between each other. And then also getting, like, Reckless boosted high jump kicks is a possibility as well. Like, could do way worse than Mienshao. I'm not gonna complain too much. It's a good fighting type. And then we get to this thing, where it sets the Snow for Bax, giving it a defense boost. And then it sets Aurora Veil, setting up dual screens for Bax. And then it also gets Baton Pass, so it can switch into Bax. Like, and it's a Fairy type as well. Yeah, it's 2 Ice types, but with the Snow, like, this team is going to be so broken with Snow boosted, Aurora Veil boosted Bax, just setting up an SD and scale shotting its way to victory. Like, you only need these 2 Pokemon. And, like, if you are hyper focusing on these 2 Pokemon, then he's gonna blow through you with all of his other mons. Like, and then speaking of, like, nuclear options, you get Mega Camerupt here, where, granted, Fire Ground type, it's not the greatest typing in the world, quad weak to water, but considering the fact that you have 2 really good water switch-ins in Bax and Hisui Samurott, like, you could do a lot worse than this. Especially with sheer force boosted, like, fire and ground stab and earth power and lava plume, flamethrower, fire blast. Like, this thing is an absolute nuke of a Pokemon. Alongside some Trick Room shenanigans with Audino being a possibility. But yeah, he just needed a nuclear option alongside the other nuclear option, as we discussed earlier. And then we have Metagross, which everyone knows this Pokemon. 11 points, it's a really good Steel type, really value. It can be ran defensively, it can be ran offensively, it can do dual screens, it can rock. It's overall just a really good Pokemon. Like, Meteor Mash to have the chance to boost your attack, being able to, like, basically just do whatever you want with it. Like, heck, you can even do weakness policy agility sets and just sweep things. Like, at that point, you basically Shell Smash on something. So, I honestly think Metagross is a really good pick, especially to complete his Fairy, Steel, Dragon Core. And then Audino, bulky normal, another regen Pokemon, alongside his other ones. Offers wish support. Like, for 5 points, this is really good wish support. Like, Joey, you could have picked this thing up. This thing would have done Blissy's job just as well, for 7 points less. Just saying that. But anyways, I like the Audino pick. Adds a lot of really good depth to his team. And then Dhelmise, at 10 points, a little on the expensive side, but this thing just punishes opposing spin blocking, because it can spin, and it is your spin blocker. Like, if things are wanting to switch in their spin blocker to block your spin, you just nuke them with a Poltergeist. And then they die, or you predict it. Like, Dhelmise is a good pickup for him. It doesn't overlap any typing. Like, I feel like Dhelmise fits really well on his team as a spinner, and for its dual stabs, I think it will do great things for his team, personally. And then we have God, the moral support Pokemon, in Unown. Mana Burn specifically allowed Hidden Power, which is usually banned, just for Victory Star, so he is the protagonist, while also being on his villain arc with his Snowbacks. But I feel like after going over that team, I don't need any more reason to explain why this team is the #1 team in the MMC draft. Alrighty, thanks everyone for sitting with me through all of this. Sorry for it being such a long video. I hope that it's not as long as I feel like it is. But regardless, I hope you all have a good rest of your day, and good luck in draft, everyone. Since next week is the first week, I hope to be seeing your guys' videos. Alright, peace out.